Hi, everybody. Welcome to Reading Between the Lines. I'm super excited because I'm here with Janetta Penner. She is the author known as J. Penner. And if you don't know, you need to know. So let me give you a little bit of background about Janetta. She bakes magic into every page with cozy fantasy from her sun-kissed San Diego home. With a cat on her lap and a pen in her hand, she invites you into worlds as warm and comforting as a cup of tea. And with a bio like that, come on, you just want to be friends with with her. So, Janetta, how are you doing? How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
I am so happy that you're here. You have not necessarily a new book, but you have a book that's first in the series that you've written. That originally you had self-published, and it's called A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic. And I have recently finished this book and absolutely am I'm just smitten with this world. So for the readers, before we talk about A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic, just to clarify, this has been picked up, I believe, by Poison Pen Press, which is a
Correct.
favorite publishing company of mine, and they've done I mean, your original cover was stunning, and
Thank you.
it's included in the new recent release. It has
It
a new cover,
is.
but I failed to bring the book downstairs. So anyway, we'll have links and you can go look at this beautiful. Oh, thank you. There's a beautiful cover.
Yeah.
But the original cover is, at least in my version, because I got my special fancy. Yeah. That original cover is included in the book. So you can check
It's
that out as well.
it's
Um,
included in all of the editions.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Let me just give a little synopsis about this book in particular. So, A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic. This is a human, a dwarf, and an elf walked into a bake-off. So, in the heart of Aidenshire, where elfish enchantments and dwarven delights rule, our main character is Arleta Starstone, and she is a human confectionist who works twice as hard at perfecting her unique blend of baking and apothecary herbs. When her orc neighbor secretly enters her creations into a prestigious elven baking battle, Arleta faces a dilemma. So besides, being magicless, her participation in the competition could draw more scowls than smiles. And if she really wants to prove her talents and establish her culinary reputation, she'll need more than just her pastry craft to sweeten the odds. So, while competing, she'll also set off on a journey of mouthwatering pastries and self-discovery and heartwarming friendships, romance, and while questioning whether winning the baking battle is the real true prize. So, anyway, with that, I encourage everyone to look for this book. And so let's start with the obvious. Baking and magic is very cozy. So, what inspired these two themes?
Well, when I went on a journey to start writing this book, I had recently read Legends and Lattes, which
Yeah,
what kind of newly popularized the cozy fantasy genre.
yeah,
And prior to that, I was writing more high stakes books, and I was kind of done with that. And I came to a point where I would at a crossroads where I said, I'm either going to stop writing or I need to do something completely different. I just can't do this at this point in my life anymore. I
yeah.
can't do the high stakes books. So I read the Legends and Lattes. I don't even remember why I picked it up. Maybe someone had recommended it to me or something like
Right.
that. Or I had seen it online and it sounded interesting because I wasn't yet considering writing that. I just thought this is different and I'll pick it up and read it. And when I finished, I thought I could do this. And it's a complete 180 from what I was doing before. So that kind of fit the bill of my either quit or do something different.
Yeah.
So at that point, I sat down and brainstormed with myself about what things were cozy, what things were familiar to people, to kind of make that connection for them for this particular book. And one of the first things that came to mind was the British Bake Off. And I actually was not a huge fan of the British Bake Off, but I definitely had seen it and liked it and had enjoyed the episodes that I had watched. And just as a side note, my husband and I have watched all the British Bake Offs on Netflix, which is I think maybe like season 8 on, basically, and we watched them all backwards. And so now we are big fans of the British Bake Off.
Cool.
But before that, I was like, a minor fan, enjoyed the show. But I enjoyed how during the episodes there was that sense of found family. They weren't the type of baking shows that are made more in the US, where it's very high
Right.
stakes and high competition, and you got to do it now, and all this kind of stuff. There's a little bit of that in the Bake Off,
Yeah.
but in general, the contestants are helping each other. The judges are congratulating the people who lost, and telling them they did a great job, and all that kind of stuff. And so just very, very sweet in the end. And it's also in the end very low stakes too with the British Bake Off, because all they win at the end is a cake stand. They're not winning $100,000 or anything like that. So it ends up, being kind of stakes. And so I thought, okay, people know the British Bake Off, and there's kind of a cult following of the British Bake Off.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that is a good that's a good starting place for me. And I knew, based off of Legends and Lattes, that I kind of wanted to go in the same vein of the more D&D, Hobbit style of fantasy. And so I just combined those two things.
I love that. I love it so much. Can you introduce us to those main characters? I actually really love the orc characters the best. But
Absolutely.
share more about those main characters.
Yeah, we start off with Arleta Starstone, as you said, and she is kind of a hot mess, and she is a baker, and she likes to sell her wares at the local market. She doesn't have an actual bakery or anything like that, but she's always kind of a hot mess, and she's always kind of late for getting there and all that kind of stuff. And so we kind of see like her hot messness through the beginning. But she's a wonderful baker, and she gets all sorts of accolades, for the people who buy her bakes and everything, that they're so delicious. And her biggest fans are her orc neighbors. And it's 2 men orcs who they are partners, and they have become her basically adopted parents, because her parents died when she was a teenager, and they kind of took over, what she needed, whenever after they died. And she's also kind of set her mind to be able to be independent, and so she always kind of pushes them away a little bit. She loves them, but she's like always like, no, I can do this thing on my own. And basically the start of the story is a few months back. You don't actually see that part, but you hear that part. One of the orc neighbors has entered her into this prestigious contest. And so whenever she gets her invitation, she's completely shocked, because she knows nothing about it. And why would he do that? And he's actually in the past, he's encouraged her, hey, you should enter this. And she's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm fine, and I'm not going to do that. So that kind of sets off the story, where she ends up going with the elf that brings her the invitation, and they head off, and she kind of gives in to everybody and says, okay, I'll give this a shot. And she goes with, and they end up at the Bake Off.
Love that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, as a side note, before I forget, that I have purchased 3 copies of this book, one, of course, for myself, but the other 2, and I'm ruining this, so my mom needs to act surprised later, as Mother's Day gifts. Like, I'm trying, this is just the perfect book for like any reader in your life. So, okay. All right. So this title as well, this book is, of course, cozy fantasy, and it involves like that epic quest theme as well that we all love, like The Hobbit. But you also made this into, as I said, a series. Does the book, or does the series, feature some of the same characters throughout, or how does that work?
Absolutely. All the main characters get their own book in
Got it.
In the next books. Book 2 will be the dwarf that Arleta meets at the at the Bake Off. Oh, I'll
Okay.
backtrack a little bit. Basically, all of the friends in the first book end up going back to Adenishire. And so because they all have their own issues and kind of want to, some of them kind of want to run away from the things in
Right.
their life, and they decide, "Oh, we like each other so much, we're going to go back and live here." And so
Mm.
book 3 will be another character that she meets at the Bake Off. Book 4 is the elf that brings the invitation. And book 5 will eventually be the 2 orcs, and it will be their origin story.
Love that. Okay.
So
Well,
each book, brings forward that new main character, but you'll still see all the other characters in the background, kind of doing whatever they're doing at that moment and supporting the main character through whatever that they're going through.
I love that. Okay. So let me ask you about, well, are you, I mean, you must be a baker. And so I wanted, are you? I mean,
You'd be surprised.
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I tend to do this in my life where I decide I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this thing for a career that I have never thought about before and that I have never had any experience. And so
Uh-huh.
I originally went to college for music, which obviously I did have experience with that because in high school I was doing singing and stuff, and I thought I was going to be a music teacher. At the end of my career in college, I'm like, yeah, I liked this, but it's not what I want to do for my career. And
Yep.
I decided I'm going to be a wedding photographer. So I bought some equipment and I taught myself, and I became a wedding photographer for 13 years.
Well,
Um,
your photographs on your Instagram are stunning.
Thank you. Thank you. So I did that for 13 years, and then that kind of waned a little bit because of the 2008 recession. Um,
Right.
and I decided I needed to do something else. So then I became a professional blogger. And I did that for multiple years as well. And then in 2014, I just got the idea that I really wanted to read some more for pleasure. I hadn't done it in a long time. I had been wrapped up in being a business person and didn't have a whole lot of time to read. And so I had heard a lot about the Hunger Games, and I picked it up and loved it. And over the next year, proceeded to read about 40 books that were all in that similar genre, like
Right.
sci-fi, dystopian type books. And about 3 months into that journey, I got an idea and decided that I was going to write a novel. And I wrote the first chapter, not knowing what I was doing at all. And literally, when I finished that first chapter, Googled, how do you write a novel? And because Hunger Games and all of the other dystopian books I was reading were all trilogies, it was, of course, going to have to be a trilogy. So I needed to figure out how to do that. And so I
Yeah.
spent that entire next year teaching myself how to publish as well as write. And
Mm.
then ended up publishing in 2016 my first book. So that is, it's, so what I did with the baking is very typical of me, where I thought I'm going to put recipes in the back of this book. But see, I'm a cook, not a baker. I'm very good
Same.
at predicting like flavors and things like that, like what's going to taste good together. But the science part of it and actually having to read the recipe, I really, I'm basically like 5 steps behind already doing. Oh, that was supposed to go in then. Oh, well, it's
Same.
already in, so I'm going to bake it anyway. Um,
Yeah.
so I decided I'm gonna put recipes in here, and so I did, and I started doing a bunch of research on recipes that I wanted to have in this book, and things like what are ratios for things like scones, like what are the liquid to fat to flour ratios, and kind of starting there, looking at other
Right.
types of scone recipes, like what are they doing in those things, and then basically starting off with a base recipe that I kind of gathered from the things that I wanted to do with that recipe. And several times it wasn't very good that first time. It might have been okay, but maybe it didn't turn out at all like I thought it was going to. And so continuing to make the recipe over and over again, maybe go back and research some things again, like maybe the liquid ratio was too high in what I did and
Right.
it didn't turn out, the texture didn't turn out. And I've just basically done that. And so basically every time that I have a recipe for one of the books, because each of the books have 3 recipes in the back,
Hmm.
I just do that research and make it over and over until it comes out. I've only had one recipe come out the first time that I did it. Most of the time I'm making it like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times for me to come to like, oh yeah, this is what I want. And so I've definitely gotten better. I'm much more careful about reading the recipes because I understand that it's a science. I weigh everything
Yeah.
into it to make sure that it's the same every single time. But I've definitely improved my skills and actually really enjoy it a lot more than I used to enjoy baking. And some of the things that I have made have now become the standard for that thing for like my husband. And
Oh
basically
yeah.
he loves the chocolate chip cookies from this recipe, from this book. And
Hmm.
that is the standard when he eats chocolate chip cookies anywhere. And he'll like, oh, that's not as good as yours.
That's high praise. Like that's really, really high praise.
Yeah,
I
for sure.
love that. Okay, well, my daughter is 13 and we will be trying out that cookie recipe then. So we're
It's a
gonna
very good cookie recipe. I mean, it's very delicious. And yeah, I love it.
love it. This book really feels like a perfect blend, of course, of like cozy fantasy and then that again, that found family vibes.
For sure.
This is something that before I hit record, I kind of alluded to talking about is like, as well as like with legends and lattes. Why do you think these themes resonate so much with readers right now?
Um, Coming off of COVID, where we didn't have connections with a lot of the people in our lives, I think that that's a portion of it. I
Yeah.
think it's a general societal thing that we do not have. Many of us do not have. Of course, some people do, but many of us do not have those strong relationships with our parents
Hmm.
far away. Our brothers and sisters might live far away. We might have limited friendships, and they might be limited to something like the people at your work. You know,
Yeah.
and those often aren't super close relationships. And so, and many of us don't know our neighbors. We've lived next to our neighbors for 15 years, and we couldn't identify them on the street a lot of the times. There's a lot of
Yeah.
that. And so, I really feel like in where we are right now. Again, coming off of COVID and many of the other things that have happened, a lot of people feel really insecure and are realizing that they do not have those strong foundations. And so
Yeah.
I think that found family is a resounding theme through most cozy fantasies in some way. And I really think it's a huge amount of wish fulfillment. I mean, most books, a lot of
Yeah.
books are like that. They're wish fulfillment. Um, and that's kind of like a foundation wish fulfillment within the genre of cozy fantasy. And I think
Yeah.
people are wanting that. And I know that for myself, I work at home, and so I don't even have those work relationships. I have
Same.
you're
Yeah.
right. And so I have people online that I connect with, other authors, and we connect, but they live states away. And so only a few of them have I ever even seen in person. I have a couple
Yeah.
that we have been in the same areas, so we meet and stuff like that. But yeah, I just think that feeling of safety, of having people that will come around you in your worst times and in your best times
Yeah.
and all of that, and really like protect you and support you and carry you through when you need that. It's just yeah, it's
I
just a
think
good feeling.
it's also, I think, refreshing where we have this genre now and where the main character is usually a little flawed, a little quirky, like we all are. And yet everyone, at least the main character, the found family aspect of it, it's acceptance, to be seen like with Arleta, like she could be a hot mess and she is
It's a
still
hot mess.
loved. Yeah. And it's
She's a very
okay.
flawed character. I will absolutely admit that she is an extremely flawed, complicated character. And I don't mind that at all, because the reality is we are those types of characters. We are not
Yeah.
the type of characters who work things out really fast and work out our mental health, and it takes us a while. And so I
Yeah.
take her through the entire book of chunking off things one at a time, of working those. And the final thing, obviously in real life we don't have a final thing, but she hangs on to her past for as long as she can. And that's really true of the vast majority of us. We are clinging to the,
Yeah.
and so for me, she's a real character, that
Yeah.
is flawed,
Yeah.
because we all are.
Was there anything about this story that particularly surprised you or maybe challenged you during the process of writing it?
Um, so when I've written the books that I've written before, I've often become emotional while I was writing them. And generally, again, I was writing high stakes books before. So generally it was when a character might die, and I would grieve their passing, and I'd be sobbing over my computer for that. But these books, I don't think I was ever expecting to be so emotionally attached and
Yeah.
uh, like be sobbing again over my computer, because these are such nice books. But the reality is that the majority of the time when I'm like shedding some tears over writing this, it's when they're so kind to each other.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, really, it's like seeing that again, like what you were saying of the acceptance,
Yeah.
and having a person see through the walls that you put up and be
Yeah.
willing to stick around to see what's on the other side. Yeah.
Absolutely. I hadn't thought about it that way. That was perfect the way you explained that. Now, the way you write, of course, is very like gentle, kind of a lyrical quality. But what is your writing process like? I mean, do you like sit down and flex that writing muscle every day and just do it even if you don't want to or you're not feeling it? Or do you do it when like the muse strikes?
I'm pretty scheduled. I do not write every day because I find I get quite burned out whenever I'm writing
Okay.
all of the time. But as I was explaining to you before we hit record, I have pretty much always worked for myself since right out of college. I've had a business that I have done, and so I had to, in order to make that successful, I had to be pretty disciplined. I
Absolutely.
couldn't be putting things off. And so when I started writing, which was, again, I wrote over an entire year process for my very first book. And I couldn't write that much per day because I had never done it before. I hadn't flexed that muscle before. So I started off being able
Yeah.
to maybe write 500 words a day. But I started to get in that um, schedule of doing it at least 5 days a week, taking off the weekend most of the time. That's not always my schedule. Sometimes if I'm wanting to write a book quicker, I will do a Saturday
Mm,
to make sure that I have one day off a week where I'm not writing. But basically what I do is I write pretty much the same time every day. I know that I'm going to be writing 5 or 6 days a week. I know how much I can write within a time period. And so I set a goal for
yeah.
amount of words that I'm writing per day. And then I pretty much stick to that goal. Basically, I'll also map out how long is this book going to take me to write if I'm doing it 5 days a week versus 6 days a week. Um, and so I mark that out on the calendar, give myself a little extra time because emergencies happen where there might be a day where you're
Yeah.
sick or something just happens with your family or whatever that you can't write that day. So I pad it a little bit, but no, this is going to take me 4 weeks or 8 weeks, depending on my schedule and how much I'm feeling like I want to write for that book.
Got
But
it.
yeah, for me, it's mostly about consistency and giving myself a realistic schedule, so that I finish something up. That's really
I'm
it.
I'm very impressed about that because I've interviewed a lot of authors and no one has given me that answer, which to me makes the most amount of sense. Is like, yes, I schedule it and I don't want to burn myself out, and I set a goal for the day. Like that is so. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, for some authors, my situation is different. That this is my job. I don't
Yeah,
have an external job that I go out and do, and a lot of authors are. A lot
that's
of
true.
authors are working 40 hours a week, and they might be tired one day and they might not be able to creatively put things together. And so, yeah, I
Yeah.
think it really depends on your situation. But for me, it's about consistency because I sometimes can be a procrastinator. So I just set the goal and I'm like, this is what I do. And that's just like locked into my brain that this is what I do, so that I don't get behind and end up not doing it. So
When do you get writer's block? And if you do, like, what do you do to push through?
yeah, this is always a funny question because I'm a little odd in this way as well. I will write my book out of order. And
Okay, and that I was gonna ask that too. Like, do you go start to finish, or how does that work?
I would love to go start to finish, but that's not always possible for me. Sometimes I often get really hung up in the middle. A lot of
Ah,
authors hung up in the middle. It just, I think I think there's a couple things for me personally, and probably other authors as well. There are probably some where this happens. Sometimes it becomes the momentum. You get to
yeah,
that middle spot and you're like, oh my gosh, I felt like I was moving really fast, and now I feel like I'm moving really slow because I still have 16 more chapters or whatever it is, to
yeah,
go. And you feel like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to get this done. And so I think there's a bit of momentum that slows down kind of at that middle. And then also the middles tend to be, from a lot of authors, really difficult to write.
mhm,
And so almost always I fall apart in the middle and I'm like, the stuff that I've kind of mapped out for this isn't really doing what I want it to do anymore. So often, almost always, there are certain scenes that are very clear in my head. Generally, romantic scenes, those are very, very easy to write because they're just really nice, and often they're kind of like a little scene all in their own. So
yeah,
it matters to the plot, obviously, because it's part of it, but it's a little removed from the main part of the plot. So it's kind of like its own little entity that's in there. And so that's very easy for me to write. Often the end is very clear to me. And so the last chapter is easy to write. I have written an entire book from the middle backwards, like going back
okay.
and then meeting up, which I find does get a little messy because sometimes you forgot what
Oh,
you wrote up to that point, and then you're like, yeah, this doesn't quite match. So I need to do some finagling of whatever I did. But I have done that. Most of the time, it's me just, again, writing the end, writing a couple scenes that are very, very clear to me. Sometimes
yeah.
I'll write partial chapters and I'll just leave them and I'll go back to write something else, and I'll just kind of see how it fits in once I get to that place. But yeah, my goal is to write every day. And so if I'm stuck, I'm not going to just sit there. I need to do something. If I get really desperate and I'm really not feeling it, what I'll do is I'll go back to the beginning and I'll start editing the book, because it gives me a chance
Mm,
to read through the story. Because especially when I'm writing very quickly, it's like powering through. And a lot of times I forget because I'm just focusing on what's it forward. And so I kind
yeah.
of forget exactly what I wrote. And so it's good for me to then, start editing through it, read through it. And then by the time I'm back to the place where I stopped, I'm more clear. Oh, yes, I need to be doing these things. And so that kind of helps me. But I always need to be moving forward in something that's going to have to happen with this book. And I'm going to have to edit it. So might as well do that if I'm really, really stuck.
That's super helpful, actually. I think that makes a lot of sense too. Now, if you could give one piece of advice to like aspiring authors,
Yeah.
what might that be?
Hmm. I think if I had a fan come up to me. I just did a signing this last weekend
Yeah.
at a local bookstore, and I kind of shared my journey that I didn't start writing until I was 41. And the a lot of times people feel like, oh, I've put this off so long, I can't do it. And she came up to me and she said, I'm in my 50s now and I've always wanted to write a book, and it really inspired.
Yeah.
And so I guess my advice was, if you really want to do it, and that's how my journey started out. If you really want to do this, do it. And it doesn't have to be that you're writing thousands of words a day. Um, write 100. If
Yeah.
sometimes find a few minutes to, if you really want to do it, find that few minutes and write 100 words, or do some brainstorming about, what you might want your story to be, or whatever, but just to kind of hop in. And I know that's not possible for everybody, but that's how I did it. And, if you're geared that way at all, where you can do that, that's my recommendation, just hop in.
I agree. I think just to do the thing and just make your
Mhm.
dreams come true, despite whatever age,
Absolutely.
anyone is. So,
It doesn't really matter. I mean, for me, it mattered. I really wanted to do something and publish it. I tend to be that way. Like if I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to do it. I'm going to follow it through to the end. But for other people, if they just want to write something, if they just want to finish a book, they can publish it or not. But they can say that I did this. I published or I wrote, the thing that I wanted to write. So
yeah.
one step at a time.
Well, so I have a rapid fire question round, but before we do that and wrap things up, I just wanted to ask, like, what is next for you, or can we support you in any way? Like, how can we find you? What's next? All the questions.
Yeah. What's next is I'm continuing the series for Bakers and Magic. I
Yep.
just finished writing book 4, which is again the elf
Yeah.
in the series, and he gets cursed, and he starts having cats mysteriously coming to him, and he doesn't know why this has happened. And he ends up having to start a cat cafe to deal with all the cats that are in his life.
I am so
So
thrilled by this. That's
and
amazing.
it's funny that this particular book I have had in mind since after I wrote Bakers. I knew that I wanted him because he has a cat. He's a cat lover. He has his magical forest lynx, Phelan, which Phelan is based off of my cat. That readers can see on any of my social media. My cat
Yes.
shares my social media with me. He's my book promoter.
Love it.
To speak it plainly, but
Ah,
I call him on all my social medias my book promoter. So, but he's based off of my cat Blanco. And so I just finished up that. I finished up the first draft of that. It's at one of my editors right now. It'll go to my
yay.
second editor probably the end of this month or so. And then that will probably publish first because, again, all of the books in this series were self-published and they all are going to publish with me first.
Cool.
That
Okay.
was just how this contract went.
Okay.
And so that book will publish with the original covers, matching original covers, in probably end of June. That's my guess of when that'll publish. And then eventually
Great.
Poison Pen will pick it up and it'll have a new matching cover, to this one.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And then after that, I will be writing book 5 in this series. And again, that is the 2 orcs in the series, Verdrith and Ervish.
Yes.
And it'll be a little bit different format than the other books. Basically, it's their origin story, which is going to set it about 30 years in the past, but it will be bookended by something big that is happening within the progression of these.
Hmm.
So it'll
How
be a little
fun.
bit, I was thinking about this the other day. It'll be a little bit like the style of the Princess Bride movie, where you're like going back and forth between the story and the present.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's going to be so fun.
Yeah.
I am so
It's going
thrilled.
to be really cute. They are enemies to lovers as well.
No,
Yes. I thought that would be
really?
I thought that would be their funniest. I mean, enemies enough for a cozy fantasy.
Yeah. I am just so tickled by all of this. Cat cafe, enemies
Yeah.
to lover. Anyway,
Yeah.
okay. So rapid fire baking round here. Scone or croissant?
Ooh, very delicious, but I probably chose scone.
Okay. And then sweet or savory?
Sweet.
And then if you're stuck in a cottage during a snowstorm, what's the one thing you have to bake?
Oh, it's definitely going to be some fluffy biscuits to go with the stew that I just made.
Oh, I'm so hungry now. Okay, so we're both on the same time zones coming up on lunchtime. So okay.
Exactly.
Um, Janetta, thank you so much. This was super fun, and I encourage everyone to, of course, go pick up the book. And again, that this is A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic. But again, the whole series, there's already books ready to go, and of course, Janetta has book 4 and 5 coming soon. So
Absolutely.
stay tuned.
Book 5 will probably publish in the spring of next year, and book 4 June now.
Okay. But still, I have more that I can gobble up. So cool. Well, thank you so much for being here, and I hope to have you back soon.
Thank you so much.